is absolutely crucial. So what does it entail? Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by climate expert, Professor Bronwyn Hayward from Canterbury University in Christchurch, New Zealand. It's great to get you on the programme. Professor, I just want to get your thoughts on this plan in terms of how ambitious in scope you think it is, and what do you think the sort of main building blocks of the plan are?
Thanks very much. I think that overall the feeling around the country and by most experts is a sense of relief that New Zealand has finally joined many countries around the world in setting up a plan. But as we know from I work on the IPCC as well, most countries are now developing these plans. It's putting them into practice that is really the next big step in funding them. What's particularly useful about this plan is its focus on protecting the poorest and Indigenous Māori communities here, who we know are going to be the most affected by our rising seas. And while Britain, for example, has been having such record heat waves here in my own city in Christchurch, we've had the wettest July on record. And so flooding, sea level rise, together with wildfires and drought are an increasing risk for New Zealanders. So it is a relief, but now the big question is how we're going to fund it.
Yeah, absolutely, Professor. And that's what I want to ask you about, because while the plan has been praised in terms of the sort of scope of its ambition, there are lots of questions, aren't there, in terms of the fact that it's lacking in detail when it comes to who will pay for it and the cost of it.
Yes, the next step, we've been really following Britain and setting up long overdue legislation. So we've put in a climate commission, we've created emissions targets and a net zero target for 2050. This step in setting out the plan and the risks is now followed by a climate adaptation bill, which is due in the legislation early next year. The Climate Minister is a Green and he sits outside of Cabinet. The Labour government has been focused on a raft of reforms. I think that this climate bill was pushed to the beginning of next year while they pushed through other legislation. From my perspective, it's a shame that these weren't integrated, but there is a lot of change happening. The new climate bill will look at
Professor,
how the insurance industry...
I'm also intrigued, on your thoughts on how you realistically, in the plan, effectively get people to move. Because my understanding is that the plan includes moving people's homes, which are in low-lying areas, and moving them to higher ground. How do you convince people that they need to do this?
Well, at this point, it's very difficult. And I think Britain and other countries are finding this idea of managed retreat very difficult and often treating it as a last resort step. But this legislation needs to provide funding and support in land use planning to make sure first that people aren't in situations of high risk, which increasingly at local government is still happening. Local government is struggling around the world actually to control land use planning along coastlines. So the first step is to get people out of harm's way before they move, and then find the funding through the private and government sector to support people if they have to move and they can't elevate.
Professor Bronwyn Hayward, thank you so much for joining us from Canterbury University in Christchurch, New Zealand.
Thank you.